Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Playbook.
On the FCF topic, I want to talk about your time at YSU, and then second year you made it to the FCF championship. You ran into Cooper Kupp on that journey, right?
We did.
What was he like?
You know, it was so funny because they slung it everywhere. You know, they had a great offense, and so that week we had two guys test positive for, I can't remember what it was, whether it was like an illegal substance, per the NCAA, because you like if you're getting ready to go play in a bowl game, the NCAA comes in and they test you. When you get into the FCS playoffs, your kids test every week, and I can't remember what we had two. I think
it was finals week, and
something. And one of them had taken something to stay up or whatever, and they tested positive. We lose these guys for the rest of the playoffs, and we're going into that game. So I had to put a new nickel in there. I moved our nickel back to safety. We moved our whole secondary around, and I'm watching these guys, and I see, and then they had good receivers, and then you got Cooper Kupp, who was just kind of like he is now, an unbelievable route runner. Mm-hmm. And how we won that game, I still don't know, because you out there playing out there on that red field, and
right,
and it was 16 below zero, whatever it was, wind chill, and but you could see that he was going to be a great player. I remember talking to the scouts, and a lot of the guys would ask me, what was your opinion on him? And I'm like, do you watch the film? Mm-hmm. Like, you don't see a guy that can run routes better than that guy. And he caught everything that was thrown his way, and it doesn't surprise me what he's doing. I just told my nephew, it was funny, we were riding back from somewhere last year. I was with my nephew, and he was in my car, and he was doing his fantasy draft. And I think in his second pick, I think he took his quarterback, whatever, in his second pick, I said, take Cooper Kupp. So all year I reminded him of it because he just kicked ass.
Yeah.
10 receptions, 180 yards, and 2 touchdowns against you guys. And you guys were bracketing him like every play, too.
Oh, yeah, we couldn't cover him. I mean, it was like he had.
It was unfair.
What did he have?
10 receptions, 180 yards, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean,
which, if you're being bracketed every play, it's pretty hard to do.
But I mean, he was a great player, and I thought we did a pretty good job on him, but we couldn't. The guy could just make plays, and
they had a good quarterback too.
They had a good everything. They had a good team. I don't know. I mean, we were really good too, but that was a hell of a football game.
We were talking a little bit before the podcast about coldest games that you played in. That had to have been up there.
That was up there, but that wasn't
Washington.
as cold as a couple of the other ones. That was weird. You get up there, you're out there in Washington, and you're kind of in the. The elevation is so high, it just feels different. Mm-hmm. But I got to tell you, the last 3 minutes of that game, I just wanted to get the hell out of there. I mean, it was so funny because we win the game, and guys are going crazy on the field. And I'm walking across. In our locker room was, once you went through the end zone, you had to walk about 500 yards to get to the locker room. And the lady from ESPN comes running up and says, Coach Bellini, I won. We're going to cut, it was such a great game. We're going to cut straight to Sports Center. And she said, and I said, when? And she was like, just give me 30 seconds. And I was like, you got 30 seconds because I just want to get the hell out of here. And she looked at me like, are you serious? I was like, yes, I am so cold at that point.
Yeah.
That's like when we played Michigan.
That is the worst experience I've ever had at a football game.
Worst.
We lost.
Damn.
We lost by like 40.
Everybody talks about that. Everybody I know that played at Notre Dame talks about that game.
Yeah, because we lost by like 30, and it was hailing, and it was freezing. Like, you couldn't stay dry, cleats soaking wet.
Your feet are... Yeah. You can't feel your feet.
Yeah, it was awful. And, like, our rivalry, we just got in... And it wasn't... Because we played them the year before, and we beat them. And then we went to their house and we lost to them. So it's like we don't get another shot at Michigan. Like that was the last time I played Michigan, and that's the last time Notre Dame has played them in a while. So they have that over.
That
us
was
each
just
other.
a strange football game. The
Yeah,
weather
like-
sucked. Like nothing went right.
Yeah, anytime Michigan is in a storm, I'd say you bet on them because the Ohio State game, it was a storm, and anytime anytime the team needs to run the ball, take Michigan. that's what they
literally. I mean,
It's so funny that you guys talk about the cold games. We played Penn State the one year when I was at Nebraska at Penn State, and I mean everyone who was in the stands. I thought it was cold. I didn't think it was that bad. I probably had like 17 layers on though. But my oldest brother who was at that game still to this day says his feet are still screwed up because he got frostbite at that game, and it's like 8 years later or 10 years later, whatever it is. But it's funny how you remember those ones.
you just remember the most pain you've been in in those games.
Yeah, emotionally and physically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had the bus back.
Bus back.
So
All the way from
it
Ann
wasn't
Arbor.
like it was a tough trip. I mean,
How long a bus ride is that?
About like two.
yeah,
two
it
or
wasn't
three.
it wasn't too bad. I
No.
mean, after the loss, it was terrible,
A
but
lot longer. Yeah.
it was funny because Lizzie, Lizzie, right?
Yeah.
She had went to Michigan, so I was like throughout the week I was like dogging Michigan, like I was like sending Snapchats like Michigan week, and then she sends me one right after the game, and she says Michigan week.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, it was tough.
He knows Lizzie Philbin through.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How
Who
do
was
you know her?
So my quarterback Brett Keene, in high school, her
first
sister-
female kicker in high school or in Ohio high school football, I think, too, by the way. Shout out Lizzie.
My quarterback, his sister played soccer at Ball State, and that's where Lizzie transferred to. So that's kind of how we ended up meeting.
Yeah.
And then it so happened that she was from Youngstown and went to Mooney.
Yeah,
She was an athlete.
she was a good soccer player, but she actually like kicked for our high school team. We ended up bringing on a soccer player.
Yeah, he held for her. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember. I can't remember the
It was
first time
crazy.
she kicked. I remember like sitting there and I'm like, who the hell is that? And I realized it was Lizzie Philbin went in there.
Because I was the
She
kick.
had
Because
help.
I had to kick. I was our option at kicker, and I was okay. I wasn't very good, so we had to look for other options. Lizzie came in, did really well. She kind of split time with another one of our soccer players, which was kind of funny.
We
how-
recruited some soccer players too, my senior year, because we had kickers, but we just, for some reason our kickers were getting hurt. Like
yeah.
senior year, like we went through like probably 3 kickers. We had a different kick. Like I was like, what's going on? But it was funny because like our kickoffs, like we changed our kickoff to like we just pushed it and then we just let us run down and tackle them, and then we had extra points. We could kick extra points, but yeah, I don't know why, but our kickers, we went through a lot of kickers that year. But
Remember
also,
his senior year, he tells me it's like Thursday or Friday. He says, I might be kicking this week, and I was like, what? You can't kick. Like,
Oh
he was like,
bullshit! I can't kick.
Huh?
No, I'm joking.
He still thinks he can kick because, like, after the games when he was little, when he was growing up in Nebraska, they would go into the indoor after games, and I would always know where they were because him and his buddies would be in there, like kicking field goals in the indoor, and I'd be like, "Come on, let's go."
During
Let's
spring
get
ball,
out
we
of here."
would go out after practice sometimes and kick field goals. I would talk shit to the specialist during practice. I'd be like, I can make that over you. So I would go out and try and make like a 30, 40 yarder.
But he would be taking like he'd get like 10 yards away and I'd be like, "Hey, you can't kick like
yeah,
that."
it's getting blocked.
Yeah. But yeah, so Shaun, I want to ask you this. Obviously you played mostly DB when you were at Notre Dame, but what was it like playing for? You went through a number of different position coaches while you were there. What was it like just kind of being like forced to kind of transition into like new coaching styles, because you were with Coach Light to start, and then
With Coach Light, then we had coach.
You kind of moved to safety a little bit.
Yeah, it was. The coaching changes weren't tough because since I played corner nickel and then learned safety, I was always with the coaches. I was always working with different coaches. So especially like we had a corner coach and then I would work with a different nickel coach. And so I was kind of used to like working with a different coach and kind of learning like, like their techniques and, how every coach coaches different. So I just grabbed pieces from them, which was really unique and like fun. But I always like look back on it and I was like, dang, safety was. I ended up playing safety my last year, in which it was fun, but I didn't like ever go into a game until like probably halfway through to where it was like, all right, I know what I'm doing, because it was like we had great corners. We brought in a corner and we had a freshman corner and we had some younger corners coming up. To where it's like they didn't really need me at corner, but we didn't have a legit safety that play next to Kyle Hamilton.
Right.
So I was like, all right, yeah, I'll play safety. Like safety's fun. I don't like I can be involved. I was the type of guy who, since I played nickel, I wanted to be involved in every play. And so when I moved to safety, it's like I want to be involved in every play, which is bad. When you're supposed to be the safety net of the defense. Yeah. And I learned that pretty quickly, but it was a tough transition because at corner it was like I got to either we were in man or pretty much forward to it was a quick read and I was turning to man. And then even at nickel it was majority man and then some zone drops. But safety, it was a completely different ball game to where it's like now I'm calling the defense. I'm communicating to the corner, telling him what to do, to the nickel, to the Sam, and also having to read from the pass or the set from the lineman to the quarterback to now, and then I also got to look outside and see what my corner's doing. So that was a tough transition. But having a coach like Coach Joseph, he made the transition like better than I think than anyone could. We watched a ton of film, and I feel like the way Coach Joseph breaks things down is he really like allowed me to learn it the best way that I could, and then once he found out how I could learn it, he like changed his coaching techniques to fit me, if that makes sense. It wasn't like he had one way of coaching or one way of teaching, and I had to learn that way. It was
he was going to adjust to you.
He worked with me, and so we would sit in his office like for hours and just kind of go over like the defense and kind of how I see things versus how he sees things. And I remember I hated this, but we needed it. He would make us stand up in front of the screen and like communicate because we were terrible on the field and we would get out there and just want to play. So we in the film room we would stand up in front,
make your calls,
and we would make our calls, and he would run play, and like we would have to like in a small space like kind of like tell him our progression of what we're doing and things like that. And it challenged me because like in the film room I'd be like, yeah, I got it. Like I feel like I'm pretty smart and I could grasp a lot of things at football, but like on the field I was mute. I wouldn't say anything. So that definitely helped me by the end of the year.
Think about that when you were playing corner and nickel. If you would have looked, like I always used to tell the players, I said, learn what's going on around you. Mm-hmm. Learn what the guys to your left or right, behind, in front are doing, and everything would come together so much easier. At safety, you really don't have a choice. You've got to know what's going on. But think about how that would have helped you. It's pretty amazing. You learn corner, you learn nickel, you learn safety, but like it is a nickel. If you understand what's going on behind you and outside of you, think about how much easier it is to make good decisions.
Yeah, especially at nickel, I understood the corner's fits, and I knew what the corner was reading, and so I knew obviously certain coverages I knew I couldn't go inside or I couldn't go outside, and then as safety, that kind of helped me knowing nickel to where it's like, well, now I know my run fit off the nickel or off the backer. And so I kind of started to piece it together, but it definitely was challenging for sure. But
hell, you might end up being a coach someday.
Yeah, have you ever given it thought? Because like you've talked about how you've kind of bounced around from position to position. Like,
I don't know.
Do you think that could translate?
Right now, no, because I have this feeling that I still could just go out there and play better than have to people on the field in the NFL. So
Need some time away from it.
right, yeah. So like right there, like right now, no. But even when I was like after the Raiders, I went back to Notre Dame and trained just where I was training at, because it got cold here. So like when I went there, use their indoor and stuff. So I would help out at practice. I would go to the meeting rooms or go to the film sessions and things like that with the players and coaches, and it was fun. It was cool, like learning all the new terminology and things like that. But I don't just the space that I'm in right now. I feel like I can't. Like I need to like open up more in order to be a coach. Like I'm too. I don't know how to describe it, but I'm like too to myself right now. To where it's like I could see a player and he do something, but I won't go up into him and be like, "Yo, go do this. Like try it this way, whatever." But instead, I'll just see it and just kind of let it go by. But maybe one day, I think. But right now, I couldn't.
Yeah, I could see myself doing like high school at one point, but I don't think I could. I mean, I just look back at like Coach O'Leary, who's now the safeties coach at Notre Dame, like watching like how, like just the grind that he was always on, like as a GA, kind of how you have to start off. I don't know if I'm ready to sign up for that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of got like Ariane.
Yeah, Ariane,
who's at
Jimmy,
Vandy now.
Nico.
Yeah, Nico's at LSU. Like Nico's telling me his schedule. He's up at like 5 a.m. and he's home at 10 p.m. And I was like, dude. I mean, you got to.
It's like you're a player over again.
Yeah, you got to
So I
start.
started. I mean, it's funny because you were asking me, how I ended up on when I finished at Ohio State, I went to Iowa as a GA and had a great experience there. Was there with like Mark Stoops was there with me and Mike Stoops at the time, and had a great year there. But I was like, hell, I was like looking and seeing some of the guys that had been GAs for 3, 4, 5 years.
Right.
And I'm like, making nothing, and I was like, do I want to do this for that long? And without any guarantee anything happened at the end. So that's when I went to grad school at OU, Ohio U. Like I got into their sports ad program, and they wouldn't let you coach in that program at that time. So when like 1 year got my master's, and when I was done, I was went back to Youngstown and was kind of looking at different jobs and that type of thing, and so I coached at Mooney that year. Like I helped out at Mooney. I think I joined them after like the first or second game of the year, and then finished out the year with them. And then, but during that time, when I was finished with my master's, I was sending out letters to everybody, to NFL teams and major league teams, NBA, colleges, and trying to find whatever I could. Most people didn't respond, and I was at Ohio State I was down at Ohio State at a game, and my mom called and said, Dwight Clark from the 49ers called. And I was like, really? So they said they were playing in Detroit in a couple weeks, and they wanted me to come interview for a scouting position. And I didn't want to scout. I had no desire to be a scout. But I went and, the 49ers at that time were the 49ers. They were, and they offered me this position after I had to evaluate some tapes and do some different things, and they offered me a job. I took the job and moved out there, got engaged, went out there by myself, and I was there with some coaches. They had just changed their defensive coaching staff, so I was doing the scouting stuff, which was kind of in-house. I wasn't doing that much. It was more busy work, and so at night, instead of going and sitting in my hotel room at night, I would sit around and watch film with the new defensive staff. And I was like watching tape and just kind of killing time. But I figure I better, I might as well try to learn the defense as I'm going and see what they're doing. And I got called in after like 3 or 4 weeks, and they said they were looking to hire an assistant secondary coach, and the defensive coaches would just assume you do it if you're interested. And I was like, hell yeah. So I actually did. That's how it happened. I mean,
How old are you at this time?
I think I was 25. Yeah.
That's pretty quick, right? 25.
I was like 25 or 26. Let's see. We won the Super Bowl in '94. Yeah, so I was like 26 when I got that.
And were you moved to when you won the Super Bowl? Were you moved to the head DB coach, or were you still just the assistant coach?
I was still the assistant. That was my first year.
Okay.
I kind of worked more mainly with the safeties, and it was awesome.
Was that Dion?
Yeah, Dion, and we had Dion and Eric Davis at corners. Our safeties were Merton Hanks, who I actually played against in college, and Tim McDonald.
How was it coaching? Or how was it coaching Dion? Like, is that
Tell
a player?
Tell him the film.
Yeah,
story.
is that a player that you like coach technique, or is just like you just coach him the scheme and then he just goes out and does his thing?
I mean, he would. I can say I think the biggest, I don't know what you call it, misconception about Dion was that everyone was like he didn't work hard and do that. He did as much as he needed to do. He competed when he wouldn't do a lot of one-on-ones, but when he did, he was going against Jerry Rice and challenging himself. And but he was a guy. I mean, he was long, and I mean, ridiculous. I always say he was as fast as he needed to be at the time, which I've never said that about anybody, but it was like he could go as fast as he needed to go, and he was phenomenal. But yeah, he wasn't a guy that you were messing with his technique or anything like that. Yeah, Dion wanted it to be like, okay, I got this guy. You guys worry about those 10. And that's seriously how he looked at the game. But I remember because he was playing for the Reds.
Right.
We signed him, and he was playing for the Reds, and I think he missed him. He wasn't there with us till like week 3, 3 or 4. I can't remember what it was. We were getting ready to play the Rams. Flipper Anderson. Do you remember him?
I do not know Flipper Anderson.
This guy was a dude. He was a good wideout. And we were like, we had, defenses where, a defense where you could roll over top of him and make sure he was being clouded or whatever. And he was like, Dion was like, he had just joined the team, and we were like, well, we got to take care of it. He was like, Flipper Anderson. It's like, I got him. I'll just take it. Just put me on him. We were like, but our head coach.
Did he lock him up, or what?
I don't really. Yeah, he locked everybody up. But I remember George. Our head coach at the time, George Seifert, said, me and Tom Homo, who was a DB coach, said, take him and kind of get him, introduce him to our, how we call things and the defenses and stuff. And I think we got through one defense, and he was like, all right, I'm good. We were like, no. He was like, hey, listen, just tell me who I got.
That's how, I mean, when you have that type of talent, it's similar to like Jalen Ramsey now. I feel like the DB coach out there now is from Ohio. He's a Giant. I don't know if he went to John Carroll, but I know he coached at John Carroll, then Akron a little bit. So I want to talk to him, and I was like, what's similar to that story is like you just tell Jalen just who he has, and he just kind of just goes and cover him and locks him up. But it's crazy to have just that talent, and you being able to see Jerry, like at a young age, I feel like 26, you being able to see Jerry and Dion go to work each and every day.
I mean, I think that, I know for me personally, from my coaching career, but I think that, like, anybody who went through the 49ers during that time, the guy who had the most impact on him was Jerry Rice. Because the way he practiced, really the way he worked out, practiced, the way he went to walkthroughs, his work ethic was, I don't think anybody could ever match it. We had guys that were in freak condition. I remember a kid we signed from the Rams who could run all day, Marquez Pope, his name was. And he was a guy that we signed, was a hard-hitting safety, and we brought him in and moved him to corner. And he was one of those dudes, those guys that can just run all day. Like you can put him, and like he never got tired. And he would go and try to because he lived out in the Bay Area too, and it's in the off season he would go and try to do like the workout with Jerry. Like, none of those guys could finish his workout. And because, like, literally, Jerry would catch a ball. It didn't matter whether it was, like, let's say we were running our plays from our own 20-yard line. He would catch a slant. He would finish to the end zone. And he'd come back. He'd be back in the huddle. I mean, he finished every single time. And it wasn't like some of the time he was going to do it. He did it every time. And like when we'd be in a walkthrough, when he was done, when they were done running their 10 plays, most guys would go over and sit there and kind of talk, whatever. Yeah. He would catch balls the whole time. Like we'd have one of our equipment guys would be throwing balls, and it was like never a wasted moment for the guy. His just work ethic was just better than everybody else's. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I don't know what he ran the 40. He was such an efficient route runner and smart and all those things, but he wasn't off the charts fast. But I'd be hard pressed. I still don't think there's a receiver that's ever played the game that's better than him.
Who was the quarterback for?
Steve Young.
Steve Young.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Your first year, you're going through that. You win the Super Bowl.
I was like, this shit's easy.
Then you move on, and I feel like you had success everywhere you went, as far as the defenses, to where right after that you went to LSU.
No, I went from the San Francisco to New England with Pete Carroll.
Oh, wait, yeah. Why'd you leave after the Super Bowl?
Well, I went 3 years with her. I stayed. Okay. That was the best decision I ever made. You know, when we won the Super Bowl, Mike Shanahan had got the job at Denver, and Ray Rhodes, the defensive coordinator, got a job at Philly. But the best decision, I could have went either one of the. I definitely could have went to Philly, because I basically worked with Ray, but I wasn't ready. I mean, I coached for a year. I was 25, whatever it was, 26 years old, and that was the best decision I made in my whole coaching career. I remember Mike Shanahan told me, that week we played in the Super Bowl, our owner, Eddie DeBartolo, we had the coaches and administration, we went out on we had like a coaches cruise out on whatever they call it, in those backwaters down in Miami, and we go on this big yacht and have dinner and all this stuff. And I remember we were sitting out there, and I'm talking to Shanahan, and he said, he goes, I don't know, Bo. He goes, but I remember him telling me this. He said, 1 year with the 49ers as an education, he goes, 2 to 3 years will be like a master's degree. And he told me, I mean, here's a guy who had already been a head coach. Mm-hmm. He was getting ready to be another head coach again. And he said, I didn't really know. He goes, I didn't know what I didn't know about coaching until I came and spent time with the 49ers. And I stayed. And for my luck, Pete Carroll came in, and I worked with him for 2 years, and then went with him to the Patriots. So I spent 5 years with him, and I went a long way towards, me getting a really solid foundation. I think that's a mistake that probably not just in coaching, but in business, that people make is, it's kind of be careful what you ask for. You want a position, you want your opportunities to come, but you better be prepared to do it when you get there. And everybody wants things to happen sometimes too fast. You better have a solid foundation and be ready for the opportunity when it comes. I used to tell that to coaches all the time. Guys that, hey, I'm going to, they come with me and work with me for a year, and then they have an opportunity to do this. And it's like, guy, hey, I'm going to go to this school and be a coordinator. I'm going to go, it's like, are you ready? I know in my mind, that guy ain't ready to be a coordinator. They just, they go and grab it. Well, the worst thing to do is to be in a position and you walk in and you're not ready.
Yeah.
But I've also heard you say, and I'd like to hear you talk about a little bit about this, but I know you've also told me, like, sometimes guys get overlooked, because they don't have full-time coaching experience. Like, it's hard to get in as a GA.
Oh, yeah. I think the best thing, I can usually. It doesn't take me long. I think some people get it and some people don't. There's a lot of. I mean, you've been around coaches. You see, you've been. It probably doesn't take you long to figure out who the better coaches are, and there are some guys I think that, yeah, this guy is a decent coach, but and I've been. You might be around him long enough to think, I don't think this guy's ever going to be maybe a coordinator or a head coach for whatever reason. Because just where some guys do. And I think the worst thing that happens is, I think the big mistake that happens really throughout coaching, but probably more in college than anything else, is everybody's so hung up on experience. This guy has this experience, or this guy, he coached here, here, and here. Well, that doesn't necessarily make it right.
Right.
He's coaching, but was he coaching well? Where I see some GA, where I saw some, hell, I've hired a number of GAs in my time, and you got to get to know your coaches. You got to be around them, and and your job as a head coach, a coordinator, is to train the guys under you. And if a guy's smart and he's an up and coming guy, you got to step out, regardless of whether somebody has to give him that first job. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's better to hire that guy because you have a known quantity. But I'm sure you've seen it at Notre Dame, or that guys got passed over for jobs because they went and got Joe Blow from this school because he recruited the West Coast or something like that. It's like, well, yeah, but can he coach?
Yeah.
To me, anybody can recruit if you put the time in, but you better be able to coach.
Yeah, I was doing some research and I was looking at some of the stats that you had as a coach, even just being on the defensive side or as a head coach, and I feel like every time you're on a squad, maybe just the LSU year because this most recent one, and that was probably due to other issues over there, but with Nebraska, even with LSU and with Oklahoma, I feel like you've always went in and established a defensive presence on those teams to where I even want to talk about when you were with Oklahoma, having to go against Reggie Bush to where I think it was the 11th ranked defense, like a really good rank, or 6th, might have been that, like top 10 ranked run defense. And then having to go against a player like that. What was that game like?
That game was crazy. Like they were loaded and we were loaded. We were both undefeated, and I remember that game. Like I truly, you go into those games and we dominated the first quarter of that game. Mm-hmm. We were kicking their butt, and then we had a guy, I can't remember who it was, but we had a guy on a punt. He was we forced them to punt the ball. They punt the ball, and our guy who was blocking their gunner, so the ball's like bouncing inside the 5-yard line, and our guy who was blocking their gunner, like everyone's yelling, Peter, Peter, Peter.
Right, and it hit him.
It didn't hit it. He turned around, saw the ball, and he picked it up. And they hit him, fumbled. They cut the ball at the 1-yard line and go in and score. We never recovered. Man. And I believe a big part of that is that team, that Oklahoma team, those seniors. We had a bunch of seniors on that football team, and I think our guys were wore out mentally. I think those guys had so much success during their time at Oklahoma. I think that group played more football games than anybody in the history of the school. Mm-hmm. And I think there was so much pressure. There was so much stuff going on between. There were seniors. There were agents coming at them. And all of a sudden, that game flipped. And it was like the lights went out. And but your lights can't go out against USC. They had Leinart and Bush, and that team was loaded.
Yeah. What do you think the difference in USC then and USC now? Because when we were growing up, and when you were coaching, like USC was that, like, the team, and that was the program, and now even now it's just like even when we play them, it's like it's not the same, you know. What do you think the difference is? Like, whether would it be like just the trenches up front or just coaching style? You think like what do you think the difference is right there?
I think they've changed coaches so many times, and I don't know. It's like they don't embrace the tradition. It's like they've gone through ADs, they've gone through coaches. There's no continuity, and you got to have some continuity in your program. I think you can't just keep changing for the sake of change. And,
right.
You have to build something, and I don't think they've, for whatever reason, they haven't had that combination out there. But it hasn't been the same. I mean, we'll see if Lincoln Riley can do something different. But it's a shame because USC needs to be,
I think they need to be
college football needs it to be.
Right.
College football needs USC to be good. And
do you think they have the same
haven't been
problem as
relevant.
Texas, where
pretty
where
soon.
like you have just a constant turnover with
that's
staff.
what they've had. I mean, you can't have that, and it's interesting. Is that going to change? I don't know. You would think it's eventually got to come back around, but when's the last time the USC's really been relevant? I mean, it's been a while, right? I mean,
they had a Rose Bowl team like 2017, I think, but
I don't know. Like even the years with like Juju and they had good players, but I don't think the record was that good.
No.
right? They've had, and I think more so than anything in the last. Most of the great players and the guys who are, ranked real high in California are leaving. Mm-hmm. Or a lot, I should say, a lot of them.
The quarterbacks,
Yeah,
for sure. Like,
so you better, that first and foremost, that's got to change. You know? And, I mean, it used to be. I know when Pete Carroll was coaching the USC, the best players in California were staying home.
Yeah, Brady was telling me he tried to get Reggie Bush to come to Notre Dame. I was like, dang,
wow.
you didn't recruit hard enough, dude. Like we would have been a completely different,
Right.
Reggie Bush was so fast, and so he was such a great player. I mean, I don't know what happened to him in the NFL. Like,
maybe
he
just
had a
I think
decent
I think
career.
decent career, but maybe just the timing.
yeah,
Like I think if he played
who did
now,
he play for?
Saints,
I can't.
right?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Saints.
Saints
Yeah, he had a
and
good career.
Dolphins a little
Yeah.
bit. I just think that if he played now, I think it'd be a lot different. Like the Christian McCaffreys, Alvin Kamara's. Like I just think he played when
He wasn't as much
it was
like a
just
power
downhill.
back.
Yeah, it was just
It's
downhill.
kind of the same thing, right? Does your skill set fit the team that you end up on? And did they use them the right way? Whatever. All I know is that's one of the best football players I've ever seen. He was a great player. I mean, I don't care. I mean,
Did you guys play? We're
playing against him was hard.
that was national championship. Obviously,
That was at the Orange Bowl.
Miami.
Yeah.
Down in Miami. Yeah. Yeah.
But no, I mean, just looking it up, you're obviously on some great teams. You did win a national championship at LSU, versus Ohio State. What was that? What was that experience like?
Playing against Ohio State.
In the national championship.
It was that was the first time, I think at that time, that was the first time I had ever coached against Ohio State. I remember I always tell the story, I would always go out for a run, and we stayed down there, obviously down on the, kind of on the river, down in downtown New Orleans. And for the 4 or 5 days before the game, I'd be out for my run, and all you Ohio State fans would be yelling, "You traitor, Pelini," and I'd be like,
It's probably similar to what Coach Freeman's gonna go
"Oh
through
yeah,
this year.
he's going to go through that."
You
And
know?
I was just telling, who was I just telling about Fickle? I was just telling Coach Fickle about that. But I said, "Wait till you play Ohio State again when you're as a head coach." But it was a great experience. That was an awesome atmosphere that night. That was like a home game for us. We were playing in New Orleans, and
I feel like they always go in when it's in New Orleans
When
and they
it's in
win.
New Orleans, I mean,
Yeah.
that place, I thought the roof was going to come off of that place a couple of times. But it was, it was odd. But, you kind of get to the point where when you're in coaching and you're kind of in the business, you kind of, it's not like you forget you got your allegiance to your school. Your alma mater is always going to be your alma mater. But, you got a job to do. And you're looking at it from a football standpoint rather than from a, thinking about, you got to take the emotion out of it. At that time, hell, worried about my kids I'm coaching, and that's what became important to me.
From there, you go to Nebraska. What was that experience? First of all, do you think Nebraska is going to be back? Because I feel like when this was the time of you were the coach when NCAA football was out, and they got the. I feel like I always play with Nebraska because they were just a solid team. And me and my friends always talk about this. Like, tell me if I'm wrong, but does Nebraska expect more than 9 wins a season? Like, do they expect to win 11, go undefeated and things like as far as the fan base?
Yeah, they think that they should be they think they should be playing for a national championship every year, and I think they're finding that.
I think it's changing now.
That we want. I don't know, but that we we went 7-8 years and won 9 or 10 games every single year.
Yeah, because
there was only 3 other teams, and there are 2 other teams that did that at that time. It was Oregon and Alabama.
Yeah, because even the year when you left, the coach got fired when he was like 9-3, right? And then you coached.
No, the first time that I was at Nebraska.
Right, yeah. And then he was fired at 9-3, and then obviously you came in and had great seasons, great success, and then you were let go. So what was from the outside? It looks to me as just like Nebraska is expecting more. Like they're expecting to compete with. And don't get me wrong, I think all universities and teams should have aspirations to win a national championship. But being realistic, like. There's only right now. There's a handful of teams that compete for it every year, and Nebraska's not one of them.
Especially when you're in the Big Ten,
right? And
from the Big 12 to the Big 10.
Yeah, and it's similar to Michigan because Michigan has these expectations to where they're supposed, and it's probably due to the history, but they have these expectations that they're supposed to be in a national championship every year, and realistically, it's dude, you got a tough schedule, and you're not
just a schedule, but. Look at the recruiting challenges you have. I mean, and let's face it, people can say whatever they want, but the population has moved south, and you're out there in Lincoln, Nebraska. You have a lot of challenges. I mean, you got a tough schedule. You're playing in a tough conference. You have every recruiting challenge that's there. To think that you're just going to be able to go out and recruit well enough to compete every year. Now, can you compete for a national championship? Sure, but it's not going to happen every year. You better build your program in the right way. If all the stars got to align for you to have that team, but you're not going to go out and out recruit now. Alabama on a yearly basis or. Ohio State, they got a lot more recruiting advantages than you have.
I feel like
people are delusional.
Yeah, I feel like even at Notre Dame, I would say we have recruiting disadvantages just being in South Bend, and you try to sell Chicago's not that far, and it's such a beautiful campus, and obviously there's advantages to going to Notre Dame.
And the academic challenges that you have.
So I definitely see it, but I can't even, like you said, I can't imagine being in Lincoln, Nebraska, and then it was competing against an Ohio State or competing against a Michigan, Penn State, all these other schools within the within your conference, and then you got Oklahoma right next door. You got Texas not too far away. So it's it's I would say it's challenging to get players here, and I'm sure the coach now is finding out. But
I think the whole place is realizing that. I think their fan base, everybody, but. The situation I got into was the fact that the chancellor was incompetent, and he brought in an incompetent athletic director to get rid of the Coach Osborne, Tom Osborne, who was the AD who hired me, and it was you get those people and they make bad decisions and. Your program's got to live with it for a long time, and they're finding that out. You get 2 idiots that are in charge. I mean, and that's what they're finding out. And I mean that they've learned the hard way. They really have. I mean, it's sad but true.
How did the not the leaked videos don't matter, but or the leaked audio doesn't matter, but how did you get the team to gather around you in a high school? How did that situation come about?
Well, they wouldn't let me. The AD, like for whatever reason, I don't like. I mean, think about it. I mean, I coach these kids. They wouldn't let me have to say goodbye to the team.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I had all kind of like a lot of the leaders of the team were reaching out to me. So I said, so I found, I had some friends that were, obviously I knew all the high school coaches in the area. And the one guy said, you could go ahead and have it in our auditorium. And so I put the word out and the team came and some some reporter came and which that's one of the things about, I don't know what it was like at Notre Dame, but in Nebraska it was bizarre. Who cares? Like who would want to hear what the coach has to say to his team on his way out the door? Like, I don't know. I just find. I mean, to be
I feel like a lot of people would, honestly.
Oh yeah.
At Notre Dame?
That's click. No.
Oh yeah.
I think that's just
would you have people inside your facility or like people?
We wouldn't allow it.
I'm saying people were paying money. Like in Nebraska, people like outside would pay off people inside the building to give them inside information. I find that to be
I don't know.
So strange.
I don't know.
But that's basically what happened. A reporter found out about the meeting and put a microphone in there, and unfortunately, I said a couple things I wish I didn't. Well, you know what? I mean, I didn't say anything that was wrong or that wasn't true. Mm-hmm. I just it just wasn't meant for public consumption. But,
yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like people got to understand. Like
people do understand.
Audio tape.
Yeah, a lot of things like you're not going to talk the same way you talk to your team, to people you trust, to people you go to work with every single day, that you would come out and say the same things in the media.
To the media.
And so that's a big thing to where it's like why I kind of like podcasts now, and especially like us being younger and doing it, is because I feel like we can get just like authentic content from the people we bring on, to where you get an older reporter and you don't necessarily know like what their agenda is. And so you're going to hold back and you're not going to be as honest. You're not going to say what you want to say. So I do think that,
because they're not real. The media, let's face it, you've dealt with the media. Like most of those guys most of those media guys, they're just out. They don't care. They'll screw anybody over. But they've never really been in the arena. Mm-hmm. And they're just out for that story or whatever. They all have an agenda. People who come on your podcast, who come on our podcast, are going to know that, they're going to get a fair shake. And we're not out there to get them.
Yeah, we're not trying. Like one big thing with me is like I'm not trying to ruin the friendship that we already have to get clicks on the internet.
Right.
Yeah. Like it doesn't 100%. Matter to me. Like,
if something comes up, it comes up in the talk. And mm-hmm. And at that point, I know me, like if something controversial comes up, I'm going to say, you want that taken out?
Right.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that isn't what it's all about. It's about, and I don't think that, to get a couple clicks, that isn't what's going to make your podcast. What's going to make your podcast is authentic content and things that people like, and people like you, and people are going to like the guests that are on there. And they're going to hear other stories because people are going to open up to you because they can trust you. And that doesn't happen with the media. I mean, you watch people go up and you watched all these media days that are happening in college, and you watch those coaches go up and they're so guarded.
Yeah.
Because they're scared of making a mistake, or they're scared of hearing somebody like taking their words and twisting them, and it's a shame that's what it's come to. But like you say, I think that's why it's moving towards podcasts and things like that, because you get a lot more relaxed, a better environment where people aren't afraid to open up. Mm-hmm. You agree?
No, I agree, especially because I feel like even at the media days, you're speaking for your entire university, you're speaking for your fan base. Like you got to kind of say what they want to hear. You know, you can't, even though you may think something differently, like internally, you can't really say it. And so I feel like doing one with Coach Kelly was that for, like, I think a lot of people saw that. They saw the cool side of Coach Kelly, you know, the calm, the relaxed side.
Because he trusted you.
Yeah.
And he felt he could open up to you, right?
Yeah. And so I thought it was amazing because that was one of my first ones. And I think that's going to help him as well as far as recruiting, as far as just the outside opinions on him, because you're going to see that, like, when these coaches get on there, it's like you're feeding them questions that they have to, like, answer correct, you know? They can't piss people off. And when you get them on a podcast and when this with someone that they trust, and it's like, oh yeah, like, I'll open up, I'll be myself. Like, I'll be the guy that you see I am every day in the building. Right. And so I think that's a fun part to where it's like, even when McAfee gets Rodgers on, you know, I think he's himself when he's on that podcast versus when he's on, like, doing, you know, media for ESPN or whatever. And I love this space right now just because I think we're giving the people who matter, we're giving them a platform to speak truly and honestly.
And it's nice because, you know, I've noticed what you've been doing with your podcast. You've been having, like, guys that we've played with at Notre Dame, just people that you've gotten in touch with, you know, for just by being an alumni and playing at Notre Dame for 6 years, like Brady Quinn, Coach Kelly, Wu, et cetera, like Cleveland guys. It's fun just being able to bring different guys in, talk about their experiences from wherever it is they may come from, you know, wherever your paths crossed at one point, and telling stories and putting it out there for people to hear is kind of cool. And we really, I don't know, I was kind of nervous doing a podcast at first. I mean, I'm on social media, but I never really put myself out there, I guess. So
yeah,
it's because you knew I'd kill him.
It's been cool.
You know what's funny is I always believed that, like, with the regular media, I think the media was freaked out by me sometimes because I didn't do the coaches speak thing.
Well, you're also from Youngstown though, and I don't think people know Youngstown.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, your Youngstown people are real. They're gonna, you know, they're not.
Yeah, like, I said what I believed.
Yeah, and you're the head coach of Nebraska and other places to where it's like they may not, you know, they may not like that.
That's exactly
what Want to hear the funny thing is, I would go to media days when I was, especially at Nebraska. I could say a Big Ten media day or whatever, and I would get to the point. I used to sit there and say, it's so crazy because, like, they sit there and you say whatever and they're writing it down and they're going to go with what you say. And I used to, like, they used to challenge me to, like, I would say, like, for instance, like the one something in the like, I'm gonna, like, that made no sense. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm going to keep doing this until somebody calls me out on it. And no one ever did. Like, the one time my daughter was on this softball team, and the one mom on my daughter's softball team, her name was Amy Ramsey, and we're sitting there at a softball game, whatever, in the summer, and I said, I'm going to mention you during media day. And she goes, oh, come on. And I said, I promise you, I'm going to talk about you in my opening statement. So we're going, and I'm making my opening statement at media day, and for one of the first questions, somebody asked me a question, and I said, you know, it's funny. I just had a long talk with Amy Ramsey about that the other day, and we came to the conclusion, and I'll go on this thing, and they're all looking at me and they're shaking their head, and I'm like, wouldn't you think that somebody would say, who's Amy Ramsey? Yeah. No one ever asked me. And then another mom on that team, she, like, did these exercise classes, and she would, and she was talking about burpees, and I go, what the hell's a burpee? And she jumps off the thing and she does a burpee, and I said, that's in. She said, what? I said, I'm going to mention burpees at media day. And they say, so the one question was, what have you guys done different this off season? I said, burpees. Lots of burpees. And once again, like, everybody who knew that I was screwing around, but no one ever called me out on it, ever.
Yeah.
I would throw out Seinfeld lines.
You wonder why some people had it out to get you.
Yeah. But no one ever no one ever called me on it. And I was like,
Oh, whatever.
what the hell? I mean, because I hated doing that stuff, but I was like, you do it. I mean, but I was like, I'm just going to prove the point. Because I used to say that, I think I could say the sky is purple, and some people would write it down. And
I think there needs to be I think there needs to be more fun at media days, to where I was looking at, I was scrolling on YouTube and I saw Dave's Portnoy at Super Bowl Media Day. And obviously everyone can't, that's a little bit more professional, but I think like the way he was going about the interviews and stuff, I thought it was just great content, to where he got answers. Now, obviously you can actually ask quality answers or questions, but I think if you go about it like that way and just have fun with it, like I think the players would just enjoy talking to you more. You can still get the same answers, get out the same questions. It's just the delivery can be different. Your person, you can actually show your personality. But again, like I don't know what they teach you at at communication school but
No, I mean you're right. I mean the thing that I find the funniest about like guys like Portnoy and like the Barstool guys and like how they get responses from guys at like Super Bowl Media Day is they literally just look up stuff on Wikipedia and they see what people are comfortable with answering, and they just try and ask it in a way where it's comfortable for them to answer. And, and it's just stuff that the traditional media wouldn't ask, I guess.
Because
you always get the same questions from the traditional media. Like,
what are you expecting the season?
You're gonna get that. Those answers are gonna be out there. So it's like I'm not gonna be the one to ask the same answers or ask the same questions as 5 other guys. I'm gonna go in there and ask a different question in a funny way that's probably gonna get more attention than what they just asked.
Like when the coaches are coming off the field at halftime, let me ask that question instead of them walking up to a coach like when they walk up to a coach, you're losing or something bad happens, and they walk up to you. What do they expect you to say? How do you feel about that? The fact that you just gave up, threw 3 interceptions for touchdowns in that quarter. It's like, what the hell do you think? I mean, don't ask that question. You know, I mean, I don't know. It's crazy. I mean, maybe they're just trying to get a reaction at times. Trying to get you to react, or or are they that clueless to ask that question at that time?
The craziest thing I ever saw from a press conference was after it was, I think 2010. You guys just lost to Texas Tech at home, and the first question right out the gate from a Journal Star reporter was, "Coach, was this a tough loss?" It's like I think you responded just like next question, because it was just like, why would you ask, like, why would you even waste my time with asking such a
Dude, we got after the Alabama game, the playoff game, Devontae Smith, we got a question from media, and the question we were talking about the game. Obviously we've just lost, our season's over. Like, this is the last time we put on a Notre Dame jersey. And they're asking about Devontae Smith and the game that he had. And you're like, yeah, he's a great player. Like, what we tried to do like didn't work or whatever. And then a reporter asks, like, what does he look like in person? And I was like, we all just sat there and we were like,
the same that the same that he looks to you.
And so we like all looked at each other, and I was like, nah, I got it. And so we were just like, so I ended up just saying like 6 foot, like 170 pounds, and like that was the answer. And we were just like, next question. So like, where were you trying to go with that? Like that,
Yeah.
But that was.
I could see Kyle just sitting there.
I have a video of that too, like of all of us looking at each other. Just like,
what?
Like. But no,
I feel like a lot of it is just trying to get a reaction. I mean, they're just digging.
I think some of it is, but I think
they're digging for
interesting
content.
They're just clueless.
Probably.
It's a little bit of combination of the two. It depends on who the reporter. Obviously, there are some reporters that are really good,
but some are just digging, and just like trying to get that reaction. But it's I mean, it's different because like you have you want to get interesting content. You want to drive interesting, conversations and points from certain people. But it's like, are you really gonna risk like bothering them to ask this question? Like,
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why would you?
I feel like I want to ask how Sue was as a player, because you did coach him, and like in college he almost won the Heisman, and so before we definitely get off, I want to talk about Sue.
Yeah. You know what? I think Ndamukong Suh was, for probably the last half of his senior year, he was the best player in college football. I mean, he was always a great player, but all of a sudden, probably about midway through his senior year, he went through a stretch there that he was unbelievable, unblockable, and because he had an injury, he had an ACL when we first got there, and then when he really bought in, and he just found it, light clicked, and he hit a level there for a while where he was always a great player, and all of a sudden for a while there, he was the best player in college football. Like there's no way he shouldn't have won. He was the best. Like if they wanted to give the player that year to the best football player, he should have gotten it. And a great competitor, smart guy. He'll make as much off the field as he will on the field. Because he's smart. I'm sure he's investing the right way. He's a great business guy, and comes from a great family. He was a phenomenal player. But when I first got there, he was a talent, but he wasn't a great player. And I'm not saying that we did that, but it was his style. He was running up the field. He wasn't using his hands. He wasn't using the things that ultimately led him to becoming a great player. And to his credit, he got hurt soon after we got there, and then he always talks about the chance he had to kind of sit back during spring ball and watch the game, and watch the coach. It was my brother Carl who was coaching a position there at that time, and watching him coach gave him a whole different perspective, and I think he bought into technique, and because I think that's what made he's such a powerful human being, but he wasn't using it. Mm-hmm. And now when he gets his hands on people and he uses his hands and he plays with his fundamentals, he's a tough guy to block, and that's you see he's made a lot of money. He's had a great career. But I think people think of him too of how he is in the media, or like the kind of couple of times where he, stomps somebody with his cleat or whatever, and
but he's not like that.
He's not. That isn't who Ndamukong Suh is. Yeah, I mean we've all had moments like that on the football field or in competition or sports, but he's an exceptional. His character's exceptional.
Definitely, but yeah, I think we're about to run out of camera battery here. So I want to thank you again, Shaun, for having us. We'll probably release this, in a few weeks, and we're excited to, we're gonna have to collab again at some point. So appreciate you having us out, Shaun.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming. I know with the college football season coming up, and obviously us just getting done, and you having ties to college football, we should definitely do something throughout that time. So
absolutely,
hopefully link up again.
I'm sure we'll all be in Columbus for that Ohio State Notre Dame game. So.
Definitely.
Yeah. So we're all rooting for Notre Dame, right?
Irish victory. Nah, he'll
be in Scarlet.
I'll be in Scarlet and Gray that weekend.
But yeah, thanks again, Shaun. Appreciate it.
Thank you.